Okay, hi everybody. My name is Richie Bisso, and I'm going to introduce myself a little bit more in this pre-recorded talk that we have here. Um, Looks like it's working for Shawn. That's great. Uh, okay, so we pre-recorded this talk because one of our fellas, Tomo Moriwaki, is currently attending a conference over in Tbilisi, Georgia, and we weren't quite sure if he was going to be able to be online to give the talk live, so we pre-recorded it. But yeah, here I'm gonna get it going, and y'all can enjoy it. Please feel free to ask questions during the presentation, and we will answer them in the chat. My uh, buddy Shawn French is here. He is the writer on the project, so please feel free to ask him questions in the chat, and we'll do our best to answer those. And without further ado, thanks for having us, Interactive Fiction Technology Foundation, Daria, and the whole crew. And let's get it going. Hi, everybody. My name is Rich Bisso, and I will be your host for this panel, which is CRISPR for game storytelling, where we're going to talk about contextual injection and narrative assembly in our game, Epic Tavern. I've got with me Tomo Moriwaki and Shawn French, and I will let them introduce themselves here.
Hello, everyone. I'm Tomo Moriwaki, the creative lead at Hyperkinetic Studios, a long-time game designer. I started in '97, and I teach game design at Pasadena Art Center. And in the last decade, or over the course especially of making Epic Tavern, come to realize that storytelling is really an essential part of pretty much everything we do.
And I'm Shawn French, the lead writer and narrative designer of Epic Tavern. I'm a former newspaper sports editor who switched to writing fiction full-time about a decade ago. I mostly work on games, comics, film, and full-cast audio fiction.
Awesome. And my name, like I said, is Richie Bisso, and I've been developing games for 25 years now. Started as producer, then became a game designer, and then a programmer. And now I run a company with Tomo, where we make the game Epic Tavern. Okay, I guess that brings us to our first question, which is, what is Epic Tavern? Go ahead.
You sure you don't want to go first, Rich? I'm sure you have something to say.
All right. Well, I guess basically the very beginnings of Epic Tavern was when I was going through a period in my life where I was very, very busy. I think as a lot of us are from time to time. And I wanted a game where I could kind of pick up my phone and read about what's going on in this crazy world that's been created. And basically it would be, a narrative that the game would generate for me, that I could just come in from time to time, make some decisions, and then let the game kind of stew and advance the narrative. And it would bring in villains and kind of heroes into the mix. And something I could just pick up and put down whenever I wanted, kind of like a interactive book in a lot of ways. So then when I got together with Tomo and everybody and I was talking with them about it, it kind of grew from there into having its own life.
Yeah, well, I mean, one of the ways I would look at what is Epic Tavern, it was definitely a ambitious experiment by a handful of systems designers. I think over the course of the project, we learned a lot about storytelling, and a lot of the way we think was sort of influenced by that exploration. But Epic Tavern is a complicated toy to help players kind of activate their imagination in the context of a fantasy world through the lens of running a fantasy tavern and sort of gaining access to or building relationships with these characters who ultimately make their way to becoming important characters in the world story.
Yeah, a lot of people have called it stuff like a reverse RPG, or something where you rule the land from your tavern. I think it's Pretty pretty interesting and unique concept. It's definitely been fun to work on, and I love playing it too. So, Shawn, I know you came on later to the project, but what was your impression of Epic Tavern when you came on board?
Yeah, I mean, it was a very different game back then. Quest structure was very traditional. You had a 50-word setup. You had a 50-word success or fail resolution when you reached the destination, a 50-word debrief when you get back to the tavern, and that was the basic narrative shape. It was just all. It was very kind of bore very little resemblance to the sprawling craziness that stories ended up as. But what jumped out at me right from the start is that you had this robust collection of global variables and string command functionality that weren't really being used yet. And we were using them to display the correct name and the correct pronoun for a character who's being referenced, but not much else. And my thinking was that by kind of injecting specificity at key moments, we could create the illusion that the game is paying attention to everything you do and handcrafting you a personalized experience. And I think there was an advantage to never having worked with string commands before, because I didn't kind of come at it the way most people do. I didn't use them in the way they were designed to be used. And I thought we really had an opportunity here to do something I hadn't seen done in a game before, and that was obviously very exciting to me.
Awesome. So I guess to step back a little bit and kind of give people a little bit more context about what the game is, can you describe what the gameplay loop is in Epic Tavern?
Yeah, it's I think it's a problem we've run into many times over the years. Is when we explain Epic Tavern, oftentimes we're explaining the parts that we're interested in talking about rather than what the whole thing itself is. The game plays as the role of the tavern itself, sort of, or the owner of the tavern. Some people like to see themselves as the bartender that they see in the tavern, and there's a view of an experience that's inside of a three-dimensional tavern with three-dimensional characters that you interact with, and you serve them drinks and food. And so there's this light business sim in the tavern. Our goal was to have that be a sort of socializing phase, and that the outputs of the socializing phase are unlocking the ability to combine those characters to go on quests. And going on quests is a whole other thing we'll get into and explain, but then it's sort of a different screen context, and we go away from the view of the tavern, and you find yourself looking at a world map with a tavern simply just being a destination or a location on that map, and a way to kind of bring characters together, assign them to quests, and then those quests become sort of a traveling experience for that party out to that destination and trying to accomplish some goal. And then that then loops back around. They come back to the tavern, and then they talk about what they've done, or at least they've changed as a result of what they've done, and you start that loop over and over and over again. We really wanted to create this. One of the key objectives was this feeling of player ownership over a story that we found through the context of like complex systems games. And they're you start a game like Crusader Kings just trying to understand all the rules and trying to figure out how to succeed in the game, but after a few hundred hours, all you're thinking about is that this is my special fingerprint or unique flower of an experience that was born from all of the choices I've made. And granted, it's more than choices. Some of it's just stuff that you had to do with respect to other systems. Right. But I think in a nutshell of sorts, that describes the Epic Tavern gameplay loop.
So basically, you make friends with heroes over drinks, send them out into the world on adventures. They get all messed up on the adventures, and then they come back to the tavern. You take care of them, and then send them back out again. Is that fair enough?
While you take care of them, they tell stories.
Oh yeah, I love it.
Or at least should.
Yeah, and one of the things that kind of sets it apart from most RPGs is you aren't limited to one party.
Right.
You've got a roster of up to 15 heroes that you can kind of mix and match to see who's the best mix for each story, which is
right.
Yeah, one of my favorite things about the game.
Yeah.
It allows us to explore stories where both smaller stories and bigger stories at the same time, less serious stories and more serious stories all at once, because there is no one protagonist.
Totally. Right. So what we're here to talk about today mostly is the story, and in particular the narrative engine. So I guess the question for this one is, what is the narrative engine?
So yeah, when we're talking about the narrative engine, in a lot of ways, we're focusing on this world map, and I think on the slide that you can see here, this shows one of our parties and encountering a combat situation, and that's those crossed swords is a combat situation icon. The narrative engine ultimately is a series of blocks of text, and for some of the things that parties encounter, there are die rolls and skills that are associated with it, and sometimes it's just smelling the roses, and sometimes it's more explanation about some of the things that are going on relating to a particular storyline or what have you. Our goal with the narrative engine was to create all the necessary sort of fields in a giant multidimensional Mad Libs like situation that could be selected and modified and pushed to the player. It's sort of like, I think a joke in more recent times was that we were, without realizing it, sort of pantomiming the LLM style of word calculator, but we were trying to do it with tons and tons of data and tons and tons of complicated systems.
And actually writing it all.
Yeah. And writing it all, absolutely, right? Hundreds of thousands of words. The narrative engine is the current point of development of our best guess at trying to construct a machine that pushes both the moment-to-moment story, the chapter-to-chapter story, and the overall big acts of a story, while allowing players to have theoretically significant impact on all facets of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think of it as like a mashup of a classic RPG quest tree and this vast web of string commands and global variables that are embedded in the writing to personalize the experience. And that whole thing started, the whole like string command exploration obsession started with me as an effort to just squash ludonarrative dissonance. You know, when your stories button heads with your mechanics. Like, for instance, one of the first encounters that jumped out at me when I first started playing the game, survival stage where the party's trying to start a fire during a blizzard to stay warm. But if you have a pyromancer in your party and you fail that stage, it feels broken because pyromancers can generate fire at will. So just, it completely disrupts the story. So I started adding checks for those sort of things. Any situation where maybe it wouldn't really make sense for this to happen here. And then I'd write a different version of the encounter for if you have a pyromancer. And what that evolved into was me starting to view myself not so much as the writer of the game, but as its dungeon master, where I'm running the game for the players and trying to anticipate the ways they might want to use their specific skills to solve a problem. Like the screenshot that's up right now is a chase scene that's veering off in a totally different direction because you have a necromancer in the party. Amelia reanimates the corpse of a dire moose for you to use as a mount so you can take up the chase. And that obviously doesn't happen, unless you have a necromancer present. So one of the things I wanted to do was make it so that the choices you make in regards to who you send on a quest will not only affect your chances of success failure from a mechanical standpoint, but will often determine the tactics your heroes use and how the story plays out.
Okay. Yeah, it's totally crazy. And yeah, we're going to get into that. I think maybe first we should just explain a little bit about how the game, the narrative structure itself works. So for instance, let's talk a little bit about how quests work.
Yeah, I think it's specifically speaking, right? When you put your characters together to go on a quest, it really represents a destination where some objective that you heard about through the grapevine or someone brought to the tavern has sort of set down and offered a reward, maybe in typical fashion. And so there's some point on the world map that's some distance away, and that distance matters because the longer you travel, the more things will happen along the way. But that quest is sort of a container that carries a number of characters and that destination. And we like to see the quest as like a chapter in a story. And of course, we can string lots of chapters together to make quest chains. So we have these sort of longer stories that consist of multiple quests, which it's worth noting, depending on success or failure on any given quest, it allows us to sort of branch what happens in the course of that larger story. And then you can think of a quest as like a piece of the larger story. And of course, the piece of the larger story itself is comprised of a lot of other bits of storytelling.
Okay. You want to talk about those?
Yeah, and so to continue, like the basic unit of story for us is the encounter, which I think in our data we call stages. And a stage is almost anything. A stage can be any type of communication. We have many, many, many categories of that type of communication, this stage or this encounter. They are the things that happen to a party when they leave the tavern and go on their adventures. And so this diagram here kind of gives you an idea of like the flow of the way it works in the game, where a quest is unlocked, it is then acquired, and then you assign them. Actually, that diagram should say quest assignment, not acquired. Apologies. But then you assign characters to the quest, and then it sends them on to questecution. We have a day-by-day system where you spend part of the day in the tavern, and then part of the day looking at the parties moving around the world map. And then they might be out more than one day in the context of a quest, but as they move across the world, encounters will be selected and presented to the party. Some of those under our control, some of those we choose to have them out of our control, or more choosing amongst random lists of encounters. So part of the idea is you don't know what you'll encounter. Some of the ways in which the story evolves is that an encounter is been seeded into the pool of all the encounters that are available, and eventually you'll come across it on the way to some other destination, and it might trigger other things as well. But these encounters, ranging from tiny bits of text to, as we'll show you later down the line, enormous complex logical beings of variability and sort of measuring what's going on in the state of the game or with the player.
So I feel this is an important part of the narrative engine that we don't talk about a whole lot. I mean, we do talk about the contextual assembly, but just to briefly say, the engine is watching where your parties are going around the world. It is paying attention to where they are geographically. It is paying attention to what part of the world they're in politically speaking. It's paying attention to what day it is. It's paying attention to the astrological signs of everybody in the party. It's paying attention to the weather, and all sorts of different things. And yeah, looking at the structure here, what Shawn was saying about being, starting to think about himself as a DM is really reflected in the way the structure of the narrative event engine evolved. Because much like a DM, we do select encounters as the party's going, from place to place based on things that make sense, right? So let's talk a little bit more about. Did you have something else you wanted to say, or?
No, I think it's time to get some specific examples.
Start thinking of crazy.
Let's dive into it. Let's dive into it. All right. Tell us about narrative assembly, please.
All right. So this screenshot is the simplest possible version of using string commands to inject specificity. It's just the string hero1 inserts the name of whichever hero is being referenced. And sometimes that's determined randomly, or other times I'll use if checks to assign a particular hero to hero1 or hero2 slot.
And we'll see some of those coming up. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And I can check if any heroes in the party are a particular class, or have a certain skill, or a certain trait, or carrying a certain type of weapon, or carrying a sentient artifact, or the amount of ways that I can check to see who's in your party are really crazy. I can pretty much look for anything I want and assign the appropriate hero to whatever that moment is. So if I'm writing up a stage where a character is trying to sneak in somewhere, I'll check for any stealth-focused classes, or check for stealth skills, and assign that hero to hero1. That way, we don't have the paladin trying to sneak around when there's a thief in the party. That doesn't make any sense.
Right, but this one's just a very simple one where it just goes, hero 1, it's the first hero in the party. We're just going to take them and slot them in here. So at the end of the day, this would read, the road is long and hard, even though nothing is happening, says Cedric or Virgil or Urgle or Murgle or whatever.
Right. And the next slide, the next slide is a more complicated example. Now, this is a cursed doll that I designed called the Netherling on a String. And if you have it equipped, it'll periodically check to see which of the 160 playable heroes are in your current party, and then taunt one of them about the most painful moment of their personal backstory.
So wait, this is a piece of equipment that knows who's in your party?
It's a sentient item that I built with string commands. And one of the other little wrinkles that I love on it is that the first time it randomly picks a hero to taunt, and that hero is a pyromancer, the pyromancer burns its face off, melts its face off, which changes the item description, and the doll never speaks again. And in this screenshot, you can see the doll is taunting Drusilla Marisucker about the fact that her mother tried to kill her when she was a baby, which is the topic of Drusilla's personal quest. And so it's, and if you go to the next slide, you can see what this looks like behind the scenes. And here's where it gets crazy. Yeah. And of course, it's even cutting off on both sides because it's too much to fit. So this is what that sort of thing looks like behind the scenes when you really start digging into it and building crazy stuff. It's just a giant collection of if-then checks to see who's in the party and whether they have completed, like Drusilla Marisucker's mother may or may not be dead. Drew's personal quest is to hunt her down, so I don't know that yet, so I have to check when I'm doing this to make sure that that's accurate.
Well, this is a brutal environment, by the way, because so many of those, if you're looking at the screen at the slide and you see these sort of GV and a number and a setting, those have been set elsewhere, all over the game.
Hundreds of global variables. I just put them everywhere to track everything. And what was kind of fun about this is that the in-game experience of this toy that knows everyone's darkest secrets and sometimes comes to life to spill them is like really disturbing. Like I designed it and wrote it, and it's still like I find it unnerving.
Don't you feel like sometimes if you have to write something mean about a character real quick, that it might be more mean than you expected it to be?
Yeah. The taunts are harsh. Like, I mean, one of them is the doll taunting Norman Henderson about his backstory and saying, remember that time you tried to save the woman you loved and failed, and then she ended up marrying the guy who did save her? That was awesome. So these are just brutal taunts. Like, he's just digging as deep into these characters as he can.
Right.
To be fair, we need to have characters that have backstories to do that.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And it's totally designed using string commands, including the item description that changes after the doll's face gets melted. Our coders didn't have to spend a single second creating this sentient artifact. It's entirely made through the writing and just putting string commands in it. And that's really cool. That was like a turning point for me when I realized that, like, oh, I can make features out of string commands.
Yes.
You know? Yeah.
Well,
so you just ask the programmers to put functionality, like to create these string commands for you, and then you can use them to create these type of crazy narratives, right? That pay attention to what's going on in the world.
Yep.
What I find so interesting about this, the evolution of this, because I mean, a longer talk, and maybe it's something we should put together sometime, is the evolution of the way we saw the engine from month to month over the course of its development, because things at some point,
radically
what started as recognition, like, oh, we need to recognize the player. So when they do things, we know they did it. But layer upon layer upon layer of recognition is like a conversation. It's like changes the description of the reality, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty nuts with it. I mean, the game really started off, I think the first kind of ideas that we had started off as like, oh, it's going to be like this kind of narrative thing that I was talking about earlier. And then it's like, oh, we're going to have like a sports management game, but for fantasy. So it's like fantasy football, but fantasy. And then it just, as we got more and more into creating this kind of magical narrative that kind of wraps up all your characters as they're traveling around the world, like it became really the focus of the game, which has been really neat for us.
Well, let's check out the next example.
All right. What kind of context can we inject, fellas?
You answer that, Tom, or you want me to take it?
Oh well, in terms of this, like this is an example about sort of classes. Like if you think about the game, the RPG part of the game, the part that feels most like a game is that you have characters who have classes. Those classes loosely correlate with the skills that they have, and we'll get a little bit more into detail with this in the slides that come up after this. But this is an encounter, and this is just, by the way, it says conversation event. So this is in many ways just sort of filler, sort of. Right. It's a thing that adds character to what's been going on. Before this, there may have been an encounter where dice were rolled, or after this, there might be a few more conversation events. And in this case, the fact that Murgle is a fire mage has a significant impact on the way the conversation goes.
Yeah, I mean, I'm the type of person, I loved Ultima 7 was one of my favorite games of all time, and I love the stuff it did. Like, you walk into a town and the characters that are traveling with you had things to say about that town, right? And this is just
yeah. And this screenshot is using a class check to passively customize the result of it. You know, it's a quest to battle hellhounds, so the player made a mistake sending a pyromancer. You know, and you made a mistake in your party composition. You knew you were fighting fire monsters and you sent a pyromancer. You made a mistake. This is the game gently poking you about that. And I do a similar thing if you send a party out on a particularly dangerous quest without a healer. I'll just check on the road. I'll put in a conversation event like this on the road where I look to see if there's a healer. And if there isn't one, the heroes get upset and they complain that the tavern keeper, the player, is trying to get them killed, and that gives them the demoralized trait before they even reach their destination, which lowers their chance of success. So the story impacts the mechanics. You know, everything's feeding into each other.
Wait, the story gives kind of disadvantages to the characters sometimes?
Right. Yeah.
Depending on your choices that you've made.
The demoralized trait will make their die rolls tougher when they reach the final battle, because you sent them out without a healer and now they're in a bad mood.
Okay.
And now the next slide is a more active example.
Okay, let's go.
And here the results are just straight up altered due to your party composition. A hero falls through the ice, so I check to see if you have a pyromancer in the party. And if you do, they're the ones who fall through, and they just instantly dry themselves off without taking health damage. Normally, this would be like a really damaging stage, but because you're a pyromancer, she just hops out, you know, laughing and whatever. But since they used a magical ability, Murgle used magic to warm herself, I put in a spell point penalty that it costs you 15 spell points instead of health damage. So the mechanics, again, anytime I'm changing the story to customize it to who's in your party, I'm tweaking the mechanics too. I want the results to fit in. They're part of the storytelling.
Well, I think it's a great example of how the right kind of flexibility in a dungeon master just changes how things go. Just story tells it a different way because of the truth in the state of the parties and the players.
Yes.
Right. Yeah, and there are examples like this everywhere in the game. Like every encounter with undead plays out differently if you have a necromancer who's either going to who might try to seize control of them, or a priest or paladin who can turn them.
Right.
You know, I feel like this might not be the right time to say this, but I think I have to say it. Like, it's one of the things that makes us a little bit sad is that there's so many things that vary. There's so many things that recognize the player. There's so many changes that occur based on context. But the game is a little lean when it comes to features that message to the player that things have changed or that things are different.
Yeah, most of the time when we show this game off to people, they're just like, "Oh yeah, it's just, you know, somebody wrote this or whatever," and it's like, okay, they think that because of the context of their playthrough is just their context, and that's what they've been experiencing.
And somebody did, but you have to go back a couple of slides to show them what it looks like when they do it.
Yeah, exactly.
Actually, we'll go forward to a slide that'll be nightmarish, which is actually one of our lessons learned slides.
Yeah, we'll see that. We'll see that coming up. But yeah, I think that's one of the challenges that we're facing right now is how do we make it obvious to the players that this narrative has been, is tailored to their experience, right?
And players feel it. The ones, because we get these super players who put hundreds of hours into the game and write fan fiction and get obsessed with it and stuff. Right. And they're the ones who are really paying attention because you can just kind of click through the game. Sometimes, people
Right.
don't always read everything in a game, but the game really rewards you if you're paying attention,
Yep. Exactly.
Yeah.
All right.
So we are burning through time, so I'm going to try to go kind
We're
of
at
quick here.
29 minutes.
But this is a diagram that actually shows in its center the 4 primary encounter types, and in the middle ring, the 11 encounter subtypes, and then around it, the 32 skills that we support in the game. There are some outlines there. There's some bits of information. I'm not going to get too much into the details, but the way in which the game connects the mechanics of the characters and their capabilities to the stories we tell that at least have success and failure conditions all kind of revolves around these relationships. What I think is really interesting about this diagram, though, is it's kind of a fun device to sort of talk about what are the kinds of stories your game tells, and then kind of winnowing it down from there. What are the kinds of stories that your game tells that mechanics interface with, that can go one way or another, that the player has some agency over? And in this case, it's the player having agency over the characters that have agency over the story, technically. But this gives you some idea of the way in which we've taken all of these. This is like the turbulent, chaotic twist to all of this variability that we're talking about, and all of this power to modify content and sort of cut and paste fragments of story so that they become different things. It all sort of happens around the fulcrum of this lever.
Yeah, and I look at this
fulcrum of that lever. Sorry.
Yeah. And I look at the skill wheel whenever I designed an encounter. I think if I was a player in a tabletop game, are there any skills on this wheel I'd try to use to solve this particular problem? If so, then I add a little variation to the encounter for those instances. And sometimes it's just flavor text, and other times it might be a matter of life and death. There are a number of potentially fatal injury results that can be mitigated if you have a healer in the party.
Well, and right. I think that brings up a pretty good point too, is if it's got 4 main categories, 11 subcategories connecting to 32 skills. This sort of hierarchical tree that expands allows us sometimes to make comments that are vague at the middle, sometimes comments that are more specific at the ring that comes out beyond that, and sometimes much more specific beyond that, right? Each of those things, as we choose where we want to make a call against or pull against information relating to the party, it comes with a higher or lower degree of specificity, which maybe we won't want to get into too long conversation about it, but it is really essential that you have vague things that are true as well as specific things that are true. You can have sort of vague things that are untrue, but you can't have specific things that are untrue. And it's this sort of constant game of meaning that we're juggling.
Right.
Yep.
Okay. Let's go on to the next one here, which is rolling up your story world. So what happens towards the beginning of the game?
Yeah, Shawn, why don't we let you just describe this, and then we'll roll on.
This is one of my favorite things we created for Epic Tavern. Tomo and I kind of brainstormed this and came up with this idea of rolling up not just your characters, but the story world in which you'll be playing. And the game opens on a playable prologue set during an invasion 10 years before your tavern opens. And mixed in with the story encounters in the prologue are 4 special stages from a pool of maybe 15 or 20, I forget. And the results of those stages will shape the world that you're going to be playing in. So like if you successfully save Merchant Row from the invaders, it'll be a fully functioning location for you with merchant quests you can pick up some cool bonus loot from. But if you fail, Merchant Row gets overrun and burned to the ground and is now a shady, rundown warehouse area run by organized crime, which comes with its own set of challenges. So you're shaping the world during the prologue. And it also led to what became a central design philosophy for me. And that is the heroes of one playthrough can be the villains of the next. And it's something you don't see it often in games, but I love it so much. Like the screenshots here show 2 different versions of the success-fail versions of a prologue stage involving Bengar Skullsplitter, a super powerful weapon master. And if you save him, he'll stop by your tavern, and if you get to know him, you can recruit him. And if you don't save him, he turns into a giant crazy monster you're going to have to hunt down and deal with a decade later. And there are lots of instances like this in the game. Carver is another one, the assassin, who you might find trapped in an overrun prison during the prologue invasion. And the guards have fled, left the inmates to die. And if you're able to save Carver, he rehabilitates himself over the following decade and becomes a playable hero. But if you fail, Carver is the lone survivor of that massacre, and he comes looking for payback in what's probably the deadliest quest chain in the game. So Carver can either be your strongest hero or your worst nightmare, depending on how you met him, you know?
Wow.
And structurally speaking, incredibly simple to do. All it is a quest chain that either unlocks a hero or unlocks a quest. That's it.
Wow.
Like it's I don't know why more games don't do stuff like that, because it's not difficult. And it feels so cool when you've played 40 hours and you start a new tavern, and now the hero who is like the lead of your group is now an enemy you're trying to deal with. Like, that's just fun.
Yeah.
I think part of the reason is that we have a very flexible character system, right? And the concept of event or things that happen in the world, it's as efficient as the words you choose, Shawn.
That's kind of the magic of narrative games. I mean, we don't have to make, alternate geometry and alternate textures and alternate animations for neither can Bengar versus, heroic Bengar, right? Narrative, man.
Oh, and other things like, items get unlocked,
special quests,
certain types of food that you can serve. So different aspects of the game. It's sort of like if the game was comprised of like half a dozen difficulty threads.
Right.
The prologue modifies the nature of those threads.
Right.
And the fail threads in the prologue all lead to good stuff too.
Yeah.
So it's not that, you screwed up, now your game's ruined, you're going to be playing in this bad. No. They all lead to interesting story stuff. There's no right or wrong path. Every path is the real path.
And although we may not have been fully successful, our goal was to sort of establish failure as leading to interesting results right at the beginning. I think.
Yeah, I was gonna say that. I was like, we've had difficulty like surfacing that for the player, right? Like people get really angry when they fail, right? And we have to.
And
so
some of my favorite quests can only be accessed through failing.
Right.
Like there's some great content that's only accessible through failing. So
Yep.
It's not the end of the world.
So we have to go back and
stories.
We have to go back and we have to like re-examine, I think, before we ship kind of the way we message failure as well. Because a lot of our messaging is very intense and harsh about like when you fail a drink chain or when you fail a quest or whatever. I mean, if you look here, you see we have this really nice green check mark and then this really heavy, kind of blamey X that we have.
Punishment. List of punishments. Effects.
So we're getting into talking a little bit about consequences. Like, I mean, it sounds like this is a whole bunch of work. It's going to be really hard to keep track of for the writer, right? Like it feels like the engine does a lot of the heavy lifting, but it feels like you were saying, you kind of got to be like a DM and a programmer when you're writing for this thing, right? Let's check this out.
Yeah. Okay. I'll take this one. This is one of the big challenges, maybe the biggest challenge with our approach, was managing complexity, which can very easily get away from you, as we learned. For instance, if you're writing 4 different versions of each stage, that quadruples your workload. So you don't want to do that.
Right.
So you start to look for ways. Well, can I change 5 words in the middle of the sentence to change the context of it without having to redo whole versions of it? But this abomination on screen right now is. This is the screenshot that I would use when I finish writing a quest that has every skill, every character class, all the status effects you can have. And I just look through this diagram and I'm like, is there anything on here that if I'm sitting at the table, I hold my hand up to the DM and go, wait a minute, I want to use this. And it was, maddening, I think, is a fair description of kind of what I get into. But what it led to that was interesting is I came up with 2 rules for preserving immersion that kind of became the guiding principle of everything I did.
Mm-hmm.
And that one is, you can't ever be specifically wrong about anything.
Right.
If you've got a stage where your pyromancer is shivering and complaining about the cold, you broke the game. You broke the story. The immersion's gone. The player's they're not in the moment anymore. If there's dwarvish writing on the wall that none of you can read, but there's a dwarf in your party, the bubble gets popped. It's all ruined. So one, you can't ever be wrong about any specific thing. And two, every now and then, be like super specific correct about some detail of the current party composition. The cursed doll is a great example of that. That you know that the results you're getting are a direct result of who you have in the party.
Right.
And my thinking is that if you achieve both of those things, that if you're never wrong to break the bubble, and sometimes you're just weirdly specifically correct, it creates this feel that literally everything you do is being tracked to handcraft a unique story for you.
You know, I feel like something that's really important here is that it sounds like we built all this machinery to tell a hybrid custom / procedural story. But that's not the best way of describing it. What we did was we created tools and evolved tools that changed the way we think, right? A lot of what's happening here is that we see what we say as really important. You know, we said it, we mentioned before, and Shawn said it more clearly here just now, that, but to add to it is that proper vagueness is all-encompassing. It says many things, and so many of the different things that have happened all fit under that umbrella. And then as you march your way towards saying something very specific about a specific character, about a specific moment in that character's history, that can't be wrong, because when that, and if we're able to maintain that, all of the vague statements, which are, by the way, much cheaper to say, are true. And now the world holds together, right? It's sort of a strategy of information precision and building a way of working and building blocks of texts so that we can maintain this illusion, so that your imagination gets to have a good time.
Yep. Tell me about maybe some lessons. That we've learned while we're doing this, and you know, let's be mindful of the time we are running up against the end of stuff here.
Yeah, you want me to take this one? Okay, so I think with any exploration into complexity, you sometimes don't know where the lines are until you cross them. So this screenshot is an example of me crossing a line that never should have been crossed. This monstrosity is a recurring travel stage that only displays 1 or 2 sentences when triggered. The player only sees 1 or 2 sentences out of
this. This is only 1 or 2 sentences?
Yeah. It's this tiny little travel stage. But behind the scenes, it's running a reverse chronological if-then check on every major story point until it gets a hit, which allows the town crier to accurately call out whatever your most recent accomplishment is. So, I mean, this stage is obviously complete madness and indefensible use of time. But damn, does it feel good when you hit it in game, because it's always accurate. It's always talking about the thing you're on your way back from, you know, or whatever you just did, succeed or fail, which is great. And if you occasionally drill down into something specific like this, you know, not quite this far, and you never get the story details wrong to break immersion, then you get the feel that the story is being written for you.
Wow.
Now, technically, we meant for this part of the presentation, though, to be legitimately about telling you about some lessons we learned, which is we got out of control and it ate a piece of our souls in the process. I would say all 3 of us love complexity, really, still, right?
Yes,
it's still like deeply entrenched in our soul.
Too much.
Right? It exposes us to this kind of a mistake of sorts of getting ourselves into hot water. And at the same time, I think what it does most is it makes us love the moment before you go too far even more.
Yes.
It's true. Yeah, and also going too far occasionally is fine. Like this is a great stage. It works. You know, it's
I mean, how do you debug this, right? Like, how do you?
You don't. The key is you don't make any mistakes with this sort of stuff. You build it line by line before you assemble it. So I build it one command at a time. Boom, 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 and then I go through and take out the line breaks at the end. So it's not as scary when I'm writing it. You know, I'm writing it in a much more.
The length of that document, I think, was plenty scary to anybody.
Yeah.
You definitely can't paste this into Discord.
Yeah, definitely not.
No.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, so we learned our lesson. We're still learning our lessons. The game's still in early access after a very, very long development. And we are nearing the end, hopefully. And now, as I think a lot of people do who develop games, we start turning to the future and thinking about what we can do going forward.
Well, I think the biggest statement, or the main statement of this, is that we haven't scratched the surface yet, that too much of the important things we've discovered along the way of developing Epic Tavern, they're too recent and only touch a relatively small percentage of the overall data experience or the story experience. And I think that up here, Shawn, maybe you can give us a couple of your highlights, but we have all these string tokens, all these ways in which we can connect information in this kind of giant database of blocks of text that the machine does know how to combine into the stories that you see. And we're like stifled. We have so much excitement about what we could do, but sort of adapting Epic Tavern to use it to its best is ever more difficult as the years bear on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and one of the big turning points for me personally on this project was when I stopped requesting new features and started asking for a wider slate of string commands, because I realized I could use them like Legos to build pretty much any feature I wanted on my own. You know, they're incredibly powerful if you sort of ignore the way most people use them and look at them as connecting pieces. You can build all kinds of crazy stuff out of them.
I think you can make the game have one encounter and then stick all the logic inside the text of the encounter. Granted, that one encounter would be over. It would be like a couple 100,000 words, but
stop it.
It just, but I mean, the flexibility opens us up to explore and play, right?
Right.
That
exactly.
In a lot of ways, developing Epic Tavern is sort of a collaborative RPG, storytelling RPG with a lot of tools and rules, and
yes.
It's a thing that's captured our imagination.
Absolutely. All right. So here's a little picture of our team. We picked up a couple awards. This was when we went to MomoCon down in Georgia. That was pretty awesome. Yeah, we were up at PAX, picked up PAX 10 honorary award there, which was pretty nice as well. But yeah, these are some of the awesome folks that helped to make the game over the years.
You were so young back then.
Missing Remy.
What happened?
Yeah. So it's been a pleasure to come here and talk with y'all about this. I mean, obviously we just have a ton to say about it. It's a lot of fun. I think it's a really unique way to approach making storytelling feel like it is really interactive and molding itself to the context of the user's experience. And it is, authentically written as well. It's not something that's just, generated out of thin air and out of kind of not purposeful tokens, right? And I think that's just a real kind of magic. I think it's very difficult to understate the amount of thought and intelligence that went into this. And I'm constantly in awe of these guys that you see here. So I really want to thank you guys. I really want to thank Daria Ramazani and all the staff at NarraScope. And also want to thank the folks over at the Interactive Fiction Technology Foundation for being kind of the support base of this whole thing. And yeah, I'm really excited to see what we can do looking forward into the future. Here's all our contact information. We'd love it if you reach out. We love talking about this stuff. I probably should have thrown up there that we do have a Discord. If you would like, just reach out to any of us and we can give you an invite to the Epic Tavern Discord, where we sit and we talk about all sorts of things, including and principally the narrative of the game. It's a good bunch of folks. It's a nice space to live in. Does anybody else want to say any kind of closing words?
Yeah. So this is recorded, but hopefully when this is being aired, that I'm in chat and hopefully responding to some of you guys right now. But that said, if either way, I think all of us are really interested in having those complicated conversations about interactive fiction, having those complicated conversations about what is it like when the reader has an influence over storytelling, and how does that collide with the rules of storytelling that have been sort of refined and better understood over the course of human history. I think we weren't expecting to find ourselves here 10 years ago, or maybe 10 years ago, but since then, I think there's something really essential about being a human that revolves around these dealing with complexity and telling stories and caring what people are thinking, et cetera, et cetera.
Yep. Awesome. Shawn, anything you want to close out with?
Yeah, just one other thought was that the way I came to view Epic Tavern is kind of like the original Terminator, is that the quest chain forms the titanium skeleton, and then there's this layer of living tissue over the top, which is our string commands embedded into the writing. And that you still have the classic structure. You're not losing any of that. You're not sacrificing any of that. It's just that the top layer is adaptive. And when it does that, I think there's a special magic there.
Definitely is. I love playing it. It's been a long time that we've been making this game, and I still don't get sick of it. So thanks, guys. I really appreciate it. And again, thanks to Daria and the folks at NarraScope and the Interactive Fiction Technology Foundation for letting us come and speak. And we look forward to talking with you all in the future. Enjoy the rest of the conference and have a good one.
Thank you all. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks. Okay, so that is that. I hope you all enjoyed the presentation, and we are going to be more than happy to jump in and answer some questions. Do we have Tomo on audio? I know Shawn's audio might not be working, so he'll be responding to questions in. Yeah, we can hear you okay. Perfect.
Okay, cool.
So why don't I grab, I'm not sure if somebody else is going to be doing this, but I'm going to grab the questions from the text here, and hopefully we can just answer these out. All right, so first question: how did you mitigate the problem of combinatorial explosion that afflicts so many game premises? Shawn, do you want to take that one?
I posted in the question folder a copy of Epic Tavern's quest tree.
Okay, let me.
And that's one of the big ways, is that by using a quest tree, you can put in choke points to keep your complexity from scaling infinitely, and that way your variability is happening on a very micro level, on the actual result that you're hitting, as opposed to the structure of the thing flailing all over the place wildly.
Right.
So you have key points where the paths recombine. Hi there, I'm your host for today. I apologize for not speaking to you beforehand, but the recording was already playing.
No worries.
So I wanted to give an opportunity before we move on to the next question to ask this gentleman. Do you want to ask anything of these guys before? Okay, make sure you're good. Okay, I just wanted to make sure nobody in the live audience wanted to ask you any questions before you moved on to other Discord questions. Thank you. Please continue, and I'm going to sit back down.
Okay. Yeah, and feel free to jump in there anytime. Let me get back over to the questions here. Let's see. Yeah, I would say, this mitigating the problem of combinatorial explosion. Also, I think in a game that doesn't have this context injection as well, you I think the context injection solves that problem largely, right? Just like a real DM does, right? What they're doing is they're not going, if this, then this, if this, then this, if this, then this, right? They're looking at the context of what is actually going on in the world, dragging that in and kind of inserting it like this CRISPR type insertion into the context, into the narrative. And I think that solves a lot of problems because instead of having to have this huge logic tree, you're basically inserting the context of what's currently going on into the narrative, and we write the narrative in such a way that it accommodates that. I don't know if that adds anything to that answer there, but so the next question.
Tomo added as speaker. I was mentioning he's not a speaker.
Yeah, he just has to have his hand up in the other thing, and then maybe they can grab him in from there.
Cool.
So the next question: do you have an issue with players refusing to lose or die, and thus blocking themselves out a significant chunk of context? I'll take a quick stab at that one. Basically, yes. We have a pretty significant issue in that because of two things. Number one, people aren't used to losing in video games and having things continue well to begin with. There's very few games that really accommodate loss in an elegant way. And I think, as Shawn was talking about in the presentation, we do have a lot of really great stuff that is, comes after you lose at a particular encounter. And I think that we have not only are people trained to hate losing, right, and think that losing is a final state, but also our messaging in the game needs to be changed to be more accommodating towards failure. Right now, like I was saying before, we have these really beautiful check marks and nice for when you win, and then you have confetti explosions. And then when you lose, we have smoke and explosions and these really kind of judgy graphics. So yeah, it's a problem. Shawn, did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, and it's tricky because when I'm testing, one of the types of playthroughs I'll do is just a failure playthrough, where I deliberately fail everything just so I'm exploring, the other threads. And man, those are some of my favorite playthroughs. The complete train wreck runs where the whole party's all poisoned and diseased and crippled and and just a complete mess and people are dropping all over the place. It's kind of fun. But I get why players don't, like kind of a natural aversion to that, because I feel the same thing as a player.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so it's something we're looking to kind of like, at least on our end, fix. I think it's going to be a difficult hurdle to overcome just with, general human psychology and the way that we're indoctrinated as, kids really, to not accept failure in any way. There's a thing that somebody told me a long time ago about, I think they're called Sufi weavers who they weave these beautiful tapestries. And when they make a mistake, they don't go back and unravel it. They basically weave it into the fabric of the tapestry. And I think that's just a really cool concept. And, it's something we definitely try to embrace in Epic Tavern as well. So yeah, if you're playing the game, don't worry about failing or even worrying about people getting killed. It's just part of life. Let's see. Last question we've got here is, when you make early choices in your design, it often locks you into mechanics that you might later decide aren't ideal. What would you do differently if you started over today? Shawn, you got one on that?
Yeah. It's interesting because we really didn't reach the full feature set until we were well into the game. I described Epic Tavern as the first Terminator, in terms of structurally. If we were starting over with the same feature set, I might look a little more towards T2. I might look to change the foundation a little bit and get some of the craziness into the foundation of the game, whereas we were mostly using it on the kind of outer branches of it.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Okay. Yeah, for me, definitely, I think we have a big problem with, we have a few problems left to go. Like, number one, we got to figure out how to really surface to people. I think the Telltale games do a really good job of surfacing to people all the cool stuff that's going on narratively, even though, it's pretty straightforward. but they still had to really surface it to people. The stuff we have going on is really complex. And I mentioned earlier in the presentation that basically people just think that this is written, and that's, it was written once and that's it. Where really there's all this magic going on behind the scenes, and when we explain it to them, they really go crazy about it. So we got to figure out some way to surface that visually for them to be able to let them know that the narrative is being assembled.
Yeah, it's tricky
rather
because we
than just
don't have
Yeah.
the visual bandwidth to communicate every time something little branches the way like Telltale does.
Right.
If every time someone remembered something we said, someone remembers that, it would get overwhelming. So yeah, that's one of the challenges with this much variability is letting the audience know, letting the players know that things have changed.
Yeah, and also kind of like the focus of the game. I feel like if we would have had a tighter focus on this narrative from the beginning, it could have become, the way we message about the game. That we could basically double down on making it so the narrative experience is the clearly central thing that everything else is built around in the game too. Because right now it's kind of like it's a tavern simulator. It's a narrative game. It's a team, like a football manager type of game as well, a little bit. So
Dessert topping. It's a floor wax. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. It's a dessert topping. It's a floor wax. I love it. Yeah, so I think that's another part of the challenge that we're trying to figure out. Like we got so obsessed over the narrative part of it that we kind of neglected the tavern stuff. So we're trying to pick that up right now and polish that out before we send the game out. But
I think we are out of time.
yeah, and I think that's it. Yeah, thank you so much for stopping by, everybody. Hope you got something out of that. Please, please just join us in our Discord. It is a great community. I just wanted to kind of dedicate this talk to our fans, Catfish, Water Dancer, and Hayden Hurst, who are no longer with us, but they were just really instrumental in encouraging us to do this work. So I really appreciate that. And again, thanks to Shawn, thanks to Tomo, and thanks to everybody on the staff who invited us here, made this whole thing possible. So yeah, I really appreciate it. We all really appreciate it. And we'll talk to you soon, hopefully maybe next year. All right, there's
so much,
the
everyone.
Discord again. Yeah, thanks. We'll talk to you soon.
Bye.
Thank you so
Bye.
much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Have a good one.
Thank you. You too. Take care.